Kia ora, and welcome to Wednesday's Economy Watch, where we follow the economic events and trends that affect Aotearoa. I'm David Chaston, and this is the international edition from interest.co.nz. And today we lead with news. Inflation is staying high in the US, but retreating in India and Australia. The US CPI inflation rate remained at 2.7% in July, the same as June, and below forecasts of 2.8%. But it is still worth noting that June's level caused Trump to fire the bearer of that news. But the level has been held anyway. Food prices were steady at 2.9% too. Meanwhile, core inflation, which excludes food and energy, accelerated to a 5-month high of 3.1%, compared to 2.9% in June and above forecasts of 3%. The monthly core CPI went up by 0.3% as expected, its sharpest rise in 6 months. But apparently importers are still absorbing most of the border tariff taxes. The new head of the agency responsible for this data, a Heritage Foundation official, has suggested they stop publishing monthly data, especially jobs data, until errors can be corrected, which is code for what the White House wants. What today's inflation data means for a Fed rate cut is still uncertain for some. Equity markets, though, are betting this as expected result will allow one, and their bets are now 90% certain a cut will come on September the 18th. Bond markets are a bit more sceptical. Currency markets remain bearish on the US dollar. Record expected corn production in the US and the closing international appetites for politicised trade uncertainties brought a swift fall in corn prices. The same USDA report says beef prices are rising from lower tariff-induced imports from Brazil and lower domestic production. US milk prices are little changed, but they expect to import more skim milk powder. The US National Federation of Independent Business Small Business Optimism Index rose in July from June, but is still not back to levels earlier in the year. This latest rise is all about current outcomes rather than future conditions. The uncertainty subcategory was still high and rising. The US government posted a $291 billion budget deficit in July, despite a $21 billion boost in border tariff collections from importers, as spending outpaced revenues. The shortfall was $47 billion larger than a year earlier, with receipts rising 2%, but outlays rising 10%. The unexpected worsening seems to have been ignored by equity markets who like the inflation result. But the bond market is bracing for the impact of an additional $500 billion in Treasury Bond issuance over the next 6 months. Benchmark yields rose. In Canada, a sharper-than-expected fall in Vancouver multi-unit house building permits, along with a sharper-than-expected fall in Toronto commercial building, has seen Canadian building permit levels in June retreat much more than expected. This retreat comes after an unusually strong gain in May, however. In India, CPI inflation is retreating rapidly now, coming in July at only 1.6% from a year ago. In June it rose 2.1%. The July level is almost as low as the all-time low of 1.5% in June 8 years ago. In the latest data, food prices deflated 1.8%, and this was by far the major reason for the overall easing. The result is now well below the RBI inflation tolerance band of 2 to 6%, so official rate cutting may come into play. But arguing against that is the record weakness of the Indian rupee. In Germany, the ZEW indicator of economic sentiment fell back for the first time in 4 months, mainly on the disappointing outcomes of the EU-US tariff negotiations. But overall sentiment remains relatively high there in a long-term perspective. In Australia, and in an unanimous decision, the 9-member Reserve Bank of Australia Monetary Policy Board has cut its cash rate target by 25 basis points to 3.60%, saying a further easing of monetary policy is appropriate after a pause at its last review in July. Most banks announced they would pass it on in full to home loan borrowers. Lower inflation tracks are behind the official rate cut. And the US Treasury 10-year yield is now at 4.29%, up 2 basis points from yesterday. And the price of gold will start today at $3,347 an ounce, down $7 from yesterday. American oil prices have softened 50 cents to be just under $63.50 a barrel, while the international Brent price is now just on $66 a barrel. And the Kiwi dollar is just under 59.6 US cents now and up 20 basis points from yesterday. Against the Aussie, we're up 10 basis points at 91.2 Australian cents. Against the euro, we're down 10 basis points at 51 euro cents. That all means our trade-weighted index starts today at just on 67.2 and unchanged from yesterday. And the Bitcoin price starts today at $119,329 and down 0.2% from yesterday. Volatility over the past 24 hours has been low at plus or minus 0.7%. You can get more news affecting the economy in New Zealand from interest.co.nz. Kia ora, I'm David Chaston. We'll do this again tomorrow.